Hey guys, tonight we step quietly into the heart of ancient Rome. Sometime after the day's heat has faded and the city finally exhales, the marble streets still shimmer with a trace of sunlight, and the air smells faintly of stone dust, olive smoke, and the sweetness of baked bread cooling in darkened doorways. You can almost feel the temperature drop as the sky turns indigo and the first torches along the forum flicker to life. The city that once roared with merchants, wagons, and arguments about politics now murmurs instead, half asleep, half awake. A living creature settling its vast body for the night. You probably would not survive this version of Rome, at least not comfortably. The cobblestones are uneven, the air is thick with smoke, and the noise never truly ends. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I would love to know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. Maybe it is midnight, or maybe dawn is just beginning to glow outside your window. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let us ease into tonight's journey together. You walk toward the Forum, the great open heart of Rome. Though at this hour it looks different, emptier, quieter, almost shy. The marble columns glow in torchlight, and somewhere a pair of sandals scuffs against stone. You hear the clink of armor from a guard changing post, the distant laughter from a tavern down an alley. Every sound feels magnified, because the daytime roar has gone. A dog barks once and the echo bounces off the temples like a question no one answers. The air tastes faintly metallic, the way night sometimes does after a hot day. You notice how Rome never really sleeps. It simply lowers its voice. You pass a baker closing his shutters, sweeping stray flour into the street. He nods without speaking, the white dust on his hands glowing under torchlight like chalk. Somewhere nearby, a woman sings to herself while folding laundry, her melody winding lazily through the warm air. You follow the sound until it fades into the hum of crickets and the faint splash of water in a nearby fountain. The smell of olive oil and ashes mixes with wild herbs left drying on a windowsill. It is both ordinary and strangely holy, this moment between exhaustion and peace as you walk. You realize that the Roman night belongs mostly to women, workers, and wanderers, the people who keep the city breathing while others rest. Candles flicker in upper windows where families share their final meal. Someone laughs behind a curtain, the kind of laugh that means the day's troubles have been postponed until tomorrow. A group of slaves returns from a banquet, still carrying trays, whispering to each other about the music they overheard. You catch bits of Latin you do not understand. Phrases about love, money, and the absurdity of senators who pretend not to snore. It makes you smile. Historians still wonder what ordinary Romans really sounded like when they relaxed. But you can almost hear it now. A rhythm of humor and fatigue blended together in the warm dark. Farther ahead, the Tiber River glints under the moon like spilled silver. You lean against the parapet and listen. The water moves slowly tonight, carrying small pieces of wood, maybe a lost sandal, maybe a note tossed from a bridge. Rome's riverside is quieter than the markets, but stories still drift there. Fishermen talking softly about the price of eels, lovers arguing in voices too tired to stay angry across the water. Lanterns glow in the windows of houses that will one day crumble into ruins. Tourists will photograph. You do not know that. Of course, right now everything feels permanent. A breeze carries the scent of figs and smoke from distant cook fires. You close your eyes, and for a moment it feels as though the whole empire has fallen away, leaving only this, the hush of stone, the heartbeat of water, the faint hiss of a torch. Someone behind you coughs politely, perhaps a night watchman, reminding you that wandering alone is not wise. But tonight you are safe. You nod, step away from the river, and keep walking. The streets are narrow again, the buildings leaning inward, as if whispering secrets to each other. You notice a small shrine wedged between doorways, a candle flickering before a clay figure of a household god. Offerings lie scattered at its feet. A handful of beans, a small coin, a wilted flower. You realize how superstition lives side by side with faith here, as natural as breathing. At the corner, a cat darts across the path, its fur glowing briefly in torchlight before vanishing into shadow. Somewhere a baby cries somewhere else. A door creaks closed, you take another turn, and the city rearranges itself around you. the geometry of alleys and archways creating new constellations of light and dark. For a second you lose your sense of direction, but that is all right. Getting lost is part of Rome's charm even 2,000 years ago. Every twist of a street reveals something unexpected. A sculpted fountain spitting water like laughter, a mosaic half hidden under dust, a faint trail of perfume from someone who passed minutes ago, and then as you pause to catch your breath, you look up and see the stars. Fewer than you expected, but bright enough to make the rooftops shimmer. The moonlight paints every surface silver and pale gold. You realize the Romans walked under the same constellations. You know today, maybe someone back then also tilted their head the same way, wondering if the gods were watching or if the sky was simply indifferent. The thought is oddly comforting. The night feels infinite, but your eyelids grow heavier with every slow breath. You move deeper into the maze of the Subura, the neighborhood that never quite goes quiet, even when the torches burn low. Smoke from 100 little cook fires weaves through the air, carrying hints of garlic honey and whatever stew might be stretching to feed another family. A donkey brays somewhere down the hill, answered by laughter from a nearby window. You glance upward and catch the faint silhouettes of people leaning on their balconies, fanning themselves in the heavy summer air. The wooden beams groan above you. A small rain of plaster dust drifts down, perfuming the night with that dry, chalky scent that only old buildings can make. You keep walking, listening to the creak of your sandals and the quiet murmur of the city that refuses to sleep completely. A corner vendor still sells roasted chickpeas from a clay pot. The embers underneath glowing like a bed of tiny suns. You drop a few coins and the man nods in gratitude. His face lit orange in the firelight. The warmth of the paper packet seeps into your hand, grounding you in this strange hour when the city seems to breathe slower. You taste one of the chickpeas. It is smoky, salty, simple, one of those small, perfect flavors that will outlive every emperor. Historians still argue about what ordinary Romans truly ate, how much was luxury and how much was survival. But standing here, you realize the answer was probably both. For most people, life in Rome was a mixture of exhaustion and beauty, hardship and laughter. Ingredients stirred together until they were impossible to separate. You drift toward a small square where a fountain gurgles lazily. A few children chase each other around it, their bare feet slapping the stones. Their parents sit nearby, voices low, keeping half an eye on them while trading gossip about a neighbor's new tunic or the latest rumor from the palace. Someone says the emperor has taken up a new hobby. Someone else swears they saw a senator sneaking home before dawn. The jokes are gentle, the kind born of resignation rather than rebellion. You smile again, feeling the way humor softens even the hardest lives. A breeze rises carrying the scent of crushed mint from a nearby doorway. You follow it and find a woman cleaning her doorstep with a bucket of water scrubbing away the day's dust. She nods at you, unbothered by a stranger passing so late. The Romans believed that cleanliness pleased the household gods, and even this simple act feels ritualistic. Each brushstroke of her broom sounds like a soft drumbeat. Against the night you realize that these small repetitive gestures, sweeping, folding, kneading, washing, are what truly keep the city alive. Not the emperors or generals, but the hands of people whose names no one wrote down. You turn another corner and find yourself near a quiet garden behind a high wall. Over the top, you can see the tops of fig trees, heavy with fruit. The air smells sweet and earthy. A soft breeze stirs the leaves, and you catch the distant sound of a flute. Faint as a memory somewhere inside, perhaps a small dinner still lingers. A few guests, the clink of cups, the murmur of conversation. The Romans measured status in how late their evenings lasted. The more powerful you were, the later you could afford to stay awake. You think about how little that has changed. The rich still chase distraction, and the tired still chase sleep. The moon is higher now, its light softer, turning every bronze statue into something ghostly. You walk along the edge of the forum again, where the stones still radiate warmth from the day. A pair of guards pass by, their short swords glinting. They nod politely but do not stop you. Somewhere in the distance a night bird calls, and the sound seems to echo through the marble halls like a sigh. The whole city seems to stretch in its sleep, restless and beautiful. You stop before the steps of a temple. The carved figures on its pediment stare down with calm, blank faces. Offerings sit on the lowest step, a small wreath of laurel, a few figs and a clay lamp still burning low. You crouch beside it and watch the flame flicker, its glow reflecting in the smooth stone. For a moment you think of all the prayers whispered here, some for health, some for love, some simply for another day. Historians still debate how much faith ruled Roman life, but standing here, you can feel belief woven into the air like the scent of smoke. The night begins to cool further. The torches along the street hiss as the oil runs low. You pull your shawl tighter, though you are not really cold. It is more habit than need. Above you, the rooftops curve like waves frozen in motion, their tiles catching the silver of the moon. You hear the faint rustle of laundry left out too long, and the sleepy coo of a pigeon waking at the wrong hour. The details are tiny but endless, like the threads of a tapestry you could follow forever. As you start back toward your lodging, the city feels changed again. The noises have faded into background rhythm. A cartwheel, a cough, the whisper of sandals. You realize you have spent hours walking, but do not feel tired. Only quiet Rome at night is not dangerous in this dream. It is gentle, a place that breathes around you, wrapping you in its slow pulse. You take one last look at the temple flame before turning away. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster mistakes the moon for dawn, and crows once confused. You smile. Because even Rome makes mistakes, the gods will forgive it. The night will continue. You climb the creaking wooden stairs above a small Roman tavern. As the last laughter fades into the night, the scent of spiced wine and roasted garlic rising through the floorboards, wrapping around you like a lazy ghost that refuses to leave. The noise of the streets below softens into a rhythmic hum, horses clopping distantly, a merchant pulling shut his stall, a faint tune played somewhere on a flute. And up here, life takes on a slower pulse. You push open a narrow wooden door and find yourself inside a room no bigger than a stable stall, but warmer, cozier, alive with quiet purpose. An oil lamp burns on the table, its light trembling on the walls, revealing a few women finishing their nightly chores. One folds linen sheets still warm from the day's heat, another scrubs a bronze bowl with sand and olive oil until it shines, and a third leans out of the window, shaking crumbs to the pigeons that have claimed the rooftops as their kingdom. The tavern below still murmurs, clinking cups a burst of laughter, the barkeep counting coins, but up here the world feels suspended, like time itself has agreed to rest. You notice the details. The small clay figurine tucked beside a bed, a sprig of rosemary hanging from a rafter to keep away bad spirits, a chipped cup filled with water where candle wax drips like tears. These rooms belong to women who live half above the noise and half within it, brewing meals, managing accounts, sewing tunics for regulars who promise to pay next time. They trade in conversation as much as coin. Every story downstairs finds its echo up here, softened and reshaped before morning. You sit by the open window watching torchlight dance across the cobblestones, and you realize that Rome's nights belong to people like this. Not the senators or generals, but the ones who hold the city together quietly, without ceremony, keeping its pulse steady, while the rest of the empire dreams. Somewhere below, a door slams and a dog barks, and the tavern's final flame gutters out, leaving the upper rooms to their whispers, their warmth, and the faint promise of dawn. You follow the faintest thread of scent through the hallway, a whisper of rose myrrh and something darker, the kind of fragrance that clings to memory longer than to skin, and it leads you to a small upstairs chamber glowing in lamplight. Inside, a woman sits cross-legged on a low stool, carefully mixing oils in a clay bowl. She moves slowly, deliberately, like a priestess tending an unseen altar. A bronze mirror leans against the wall, reflecting the golden hue of her work. Around her are tiny amphorae imported from the far corners of the empire, Arabian myrrh, Egyptian lotus, cinnamon bark from India, each sealed with wax, each worth more than a month's rent. You watch her test a single drop on her wrist, inhale, then smile in satisfaction. The room is layered with warmth, linen draped from the rafters, baskets of folded tunics, the faint crackle of olive oil burning in the lamp. In a corner, another woman is mending a silk sleeve, her fingers darting like fish through fabric, tying together the day's small wounds. The scent of the room is dizzying, part market, part memory. You realize how much power perfume carries here. It is armor, reputation, story. Some women wear it to impress patrons, others simply to remember home, a faraway place that still lives in the scent of flowers they once knew. Historians still debate whether Rome's obsession with perfume was vanity or art, but in this room, it feels more like survival, a way to leave a trace of oneself in a city that forgets faces faster than names. You run your hand across the linen and feel how smooth it is, how impossibly soft, the fabric humming faintly with the rhythm of its making. Someone downstairs laughs, a man's voice slurred by wine, and she pauses, listening, her hand frozen mid-air. For a heartbeat, the entire city seems to hold its breath with her. Then, as quickly as it began, the sound fades, the oil lamp steadies, and she returns to her work. Rome exhales again, quietly, as you step back into the hall, the scent of her world still clinging to you like a secret you did not mean to steal. You wander into a Roman bathhouse long after most of the city has gone to bed, drawn by the faint hiss of water and the low hum of night echoing through marble halls. The great doors stand half open, and warm mist spills into the street like breath from a sleeping giant. Inside, the air feels heavy with steam and the ghosts of conversation. Lamps flicker along the tiled walls, their light trembling across faded frescoes of sea nymphs and dolphins, painted centuries ago when someone thought laughter could be preserved in color. You step into the tepidarium first, the warm room, where heat wraps around you like a thick blanket. The scent of olive oil and crushed herbs lingers in the air, mixed with traces of smoke from the furnace below. The pools are mostly empty now, save for a few late visitors who whisper softly to one another, their voices barely louder than the ripple of water against stone. A woman sits near the edge, combing her hair with slow, patient strokes. Beside her, another leans against the wall, eyes closed, listening to the echoes of dripping water as if they were notes in a forgotten song. You notice how the bathhouse, so noisy and crowded by day, becomes a temple by night, a place of reflection, warmth, and stillness. The air vibrates faintly with history. Emperors, slaves, merchants, and poets once stood in these very rooms, united by heat and water and the illusion that time itself could be washed away. A faint metallic clang sounds from the furnace chamber as the last attendant stokes the coals. You walk through clouds of steam into the caldarium, where the heat is sharp and alive, pressing against your lungs. The stone floor glows faintly under lamplight, and water condenses on the ceiling before falling in soft drops like the bathhouse is quietly crying. Someone hums a lullaby in Latin, a tune too old to trace, and it echoes through the mist, wrapping around you like silk. You think about how many stories these walls have heard, how many secrets dissolved here without a sound. Historians say bathhouses were where Rome's true politics happened, where gossip was traded more freely than gold. But at this hour, there is no gossip left, only the sound of water and the steady breathing of the city in its sleep. You close your eyes, feel the warmth sink into your bones, and imagine that for a few brief moments even the empire itself pauses to rest. You step out from the warmth of the bathhouse into a courtyard that glows faintly under the moon, framed by tall columns and the whisper of ivy swaying in the breeze. The city's noise has faded to a faraway hum, replaced by the soft rhythm of crickets and the quiet trickle of a small fountain. You follow the sound until you find a group of women gathered beneath a grapevine trellis, their voices low and calm, drifting like smoke. The air smells of crushed figs, old stone, and the faint sweetness of ripening fruit. One woman pours watered wine into small clay cups. Another adjusts her shawl against the cool air, and for a moment, no one speaks. Then the conversation resumes, not loud or scandalous, but sharp in its honesty. They talk about the men who command armies yet cannot find their sandals in the morning, about neighbors who pretend at virtue but never pay their debts, about small dreams of owning a stall in the market or sending a son to school. The words are light and playful, yet each carries a weight you can feel. Here in this quiet courtyard, laughter becomes an act of rebellion, and truth hides behind the gentle clink of cups. You sit among them and listen, feeling the rhythm of their talk, part gossip, part philosophy, part confession. Historians still wonder how much of Rome's story was written not in marble or ink, but in conversations like this, whispered between friends while the rest of the city slept. Above you, the moon glows on pale plaster walls, and a cat winds through the shadows, tail flicking like punctuation. Someone mentions a senator's new law that will likely never pass, and they all laugh softly, the kind of laughter that comes not from joy, but from knowing. You realize that these women are Rome's quiet pulse, keeping memory alive through words, through shared stories that would never be carved in stone. The fountain burbles, the breeze shifts, and a fig drops softly to the ground, ripened past its time. For a moment, you imagine the entire empire listening to this courtyard, hearing the truth of its people in every low, unguarded laugh. You follow the faint sound of strings and laughter through a narrow alley where the air smells of smoke, roasted nuts, and the sea breeze drifting in from the Tiber. The melody draws you to a small open terrace above a bakery, where a handful of people gather beneath flickering lamps. The musician sits cross-legged on a woven mat, plucking a lyre with calloused fingers, his tune winding lazily through the night like a ribbon of sound. Around him, women hum along while passing a jug of wine between them, their bracelets clinking like tiny bells. The mood is unhurried, almost drowsy, as if everyone has agreed that time itself can wait until the last note fades. You sit near the edge and feel the vibration of the strings through the wooden floor, a heartbeat that syncs with your own. The music is simple but haunting, part lullaby, part lament, and though no one speaks, you sense that it tells a story older than the city itself. One woman closes her eyes, mouthing words from a poem once whispered in a language now nearly forgotten. Historians still debate how deeply music shaped Roman nights. Some say it was entertainment. Others insist it was ritual, a quiet offering to the gods of rest. But in this small gathering, you feel it as something else entirely, a kind of shared spell that holds the world together. Someone taps a drum softly, another shakes a rattle made from shells, and soon the rhythm spreads like warmth through every breath. The city below continues its slow breathing. Horses clop distantly, a cart rolls over cobblestones, and the Tiber sighs in the dark. But up here it feels suspended in melody. You look across the terrace and catch the eye of a girl laughing behind her cup. Her joy is quiet, unperformed, real. You realize that this is what survives when empires crumble, not monuments or wars, but nights like this, where strangers hum the same tune under the same sky. When the song finally ends, no one claps. They simply sit in silence, letting the sound linger, letting the night remember what it just heard. The musician exhales, smiles faintly, and begins again, softer this time, as if playing only for the stars. You leave the soft hum of music behind and follow the smell of baking bread through winding alleys still damp from the night air. The scent grows stronger with each step, warm, nutty, comforting, until you reach a small bakery tucked beneath an archway, where the glow of the oven paints the walls gold. Inside, the air is alive with motion. Women move between the counters like shadows, their arms dusted white with flour, their hands steady and practiced. One kneads dough on a wooden slab, pressing it with the heel of her palm in a rhythm that feels ancient and sure. Another brushes olive oil over loaves ready for the fire, the liquid glinting like sunlight trapped in glass. You stand near the doorway, feeling the heat roll from the oven in gentle waves. The baker hums softly, a tune that keeps time with her work, and the others join her without thinking, voices low, tired, content. You realize that while most of Rome sleeps, these women keep it alive, shaping the city's morning with each loaf they prepare. The oven crackles, and for a moment it sounds almost like laughter. A boy enters carrying a basket of grain, setting it down with a thud that echoes against the stone floor. They thank him with a nod, no words needed. You notice a jar of olives soaking near the window, their sharp scent mingling with the sweetness of bread, the smell of survival itself. Every corner of this room tells a story. The burn marks on the table from an old spill, the cracked jug repaired with string, the faded charm hanging above the door to keep misfortune away. Historians write about emperors, armies, and trade routes, but here you see what truly sustains the empire. Quiet endurance, the steady rhythm of work done before sunrise. One woman pauses to sip water from a clay cup, her eyes heavy but peaceful, and she smiles when she catches you watching. Outside, the first bird calls from a rooftop. The air cools, the oven sighs, and the world begins to tilt toward morning. You realize that while history remembers power, it is labor that keeps the heart of civilization beating, measured, gentle, endlessly repeated, like the kneading of dough in the half-dark. You wander farther through the dim back streets, where the air feels thicker, scented with spices the city does not quite recognize. Here voices mingle from a dozen lands, soft and musical, each word carrying the rhythm of another shore. You step through an open doorway where a lamp burns low and find a room alive with color. A woman from Syria hums quietly as she threads gold beads through her dark hair. Beside her, another from Greece wraps herself in a thin linen shawl dyed the color of sunrise. Their laughter flows like honey, slow and deliberate, each gesture precise, graceful, practiced. The walls are hung with woven fabrics, patterns of palms, rivers and suns, and the floor glows under spilled lamplight. The air smells of cardamom, salt and rose oil, a fragrance that clings to your skin the moment you enter. You sit among them, feeling like you have slipped into a dream painted in warmth and rhythm. They speak of distant harbors, of ships heavy with silk and cinnamon, of homes where the sky looks larger than it does here. Rome calls them foreigners, but in truth, they are the city's heartbeat after dark, the ones who bring its music, its scents, its color. A Greek lyre leans against the wall, a half-finished song still trembling in its strings, and a small bronze mirror reflects the lamp's golden halo, bending light across the women's faces like water. They move with quiet confidence, aware of how their accents and their beauty make them both noticed and misunderstood. You see how they watch the city, and how the city watches back, curious, cautious, always guessing. One woman leans closer to show you a bracelet carved from ivory, her fingers brushing your wrist for a moment, light as dust. It is not invitation but connection, a reminder that history is built from contact, from brief moments of recognition between strangers. Historians argue about how much these women changed Roman life, but sitting here, surrounded by their laughter and perfume, you feel the answer, entirely. Their stories breathe in every street, in every borrowed word, in every song that drifts through the night when the empire thinks it is asleep. You return to the quiet upper rooms, where the air is thick with the smell of burning oil and the faint sweetness of melted wax. A single lamp flickers beside a woman seated at a wooden table, her back curved gracefully over a wax tablet. The room is still except for the scratch of her stylus and the faint sigh of the city outside the window. You watch as she pauses, taps the stylus against her lip, then writes again, slower this time, as if each word is being weighed on an invisible scale between courage and discretion. The glow of the lamp catches in her hair and paints her cheek in warm amber light. She smiles faintly, not at you, but at the thought taking shape beneath her hand. The air tastes faintly of smoke and salt. Somewhere a pot of water simmers, forgotten on the brazier. On the table lies a folded scrap of linen and a sprig of dried lavender, pressed flat between the pages of an old ledger. You realize that this letter will not be sent through any formal courier. It will pass quietly, from friend to friend, through markets and corridors, perhaps never reaching its intended reader, perhaps living only as an unspoken thought. Historians sometimes wonder how many of these letters survived. Tiny fragments of affection, politics, or apology that melted into air long before parchment could hold them. She writes carefully, her words looping into symbols of hope, gratitude, memory. Every now and then she looks out toward the rooftops, where the moon hangs low over the city like a coin dropped by a careless god. The lamplight flickers again, drawing shadows that shift and vanish like passing ideas. You feel the tenderness of the scene not in her expression, but in the rhythm of her work, the quiet devotion of putting something into the world that no one may ever read. When she finally sets the stylus down, she breathes over the wax to cool it, sealing her thoughts in a smooth, perfect surface. She presses the lavender against it, leaving a faint impression, and smiles, as if relieved. Outside, the wind moves through the streets, stirring a chorus of faint chimes and distant footsteps. The lamp burns lower, the room grows darker, and you realize you have been holding your breath for too long. You exhale softly, watching the smoke rise and curl like words unspoken, finding their own way into the night. You step outside into the cool Roman night. The streets stretch before you like ribbons of silver, bathed in moonlight and lined with the faint glow of dying torches. The air carries the scent of stone, smoke, and sea salt drifting in from the distant harbor. Cats move quietly along the walls, their eyes flashing briefly before disappearing into shadow. From somewhere deep in the alleys comes the sound of a flute, soft, slow, almost dreamlike. It echoes between the marble facades like the city's own heartbeat. You walk past shuttered taverns and closed market stalls. A baker's apprentice, too tired to wait for dawn, rests against a wall dusted in flour, asleep beside a basket of rising dough. Above him, laundry sways on a line, the fabric pale as ghosts under the moon. You notice how even in silence, Rome hums, an invisible rhythm pulsing beneath its cobblestones. Every sound, every breath, feels amplified in the absence of the day's chaos. A pair of women hurry down a side street, cloaked and whispering, their sandals slapping softly on the stones. You catch fragments of their voices, laughter maybe or gossip, and then they vanish around the corner, leaving only the echo behind. A group of guards passes by, their bronze helmets glinting faintly. They nod to one another, but say nothing, their shadows long and sharp against the walls. You find yourself drawn to the edge of the Tiber. The river gleams like molten glass, reflecting the moon's pale fire. You stand there for a long time, listening to the faint ripple of water against the embankment. Rome, even in sleep, feels alive, its pulse steady, its dreams endless. You think of all those behind closed doors, the scribes finishing letters, the bakers tending fires, the women whispering secrets, the lovers parting quietly before dawn. The entire city seems to breathe in unison, waiting for the first bird to sing. The breeze grows cooler. Somewhere in the distance, a temple bell sounds once, deep and low, marking the passage of another unseen hour. You glance upward. The stars seem close enough to touch. For a moment, time feels suspended. The empire, the noise, the history, all reduced to this fragile stillness between darkness and dawn. You close your eyes, feeling the rhythm of the ancient city settle into your own heartbeat, and for the briefest second, it's as if Rome itself is breathing through you. You follow the faint trace of music that winds through the narrow streets like a silk ribbon. It leads you to a modest domus tucked between two larger homes, its windows glowing softly through thin linen curtains. You pause outside and hear laughter, light, unrestrained, and beautifully human. The kind of laughter that only exists when the day's expectations have melted away. You push the wooden door open, and warmth greets you immediately. Warmth from oil lamps, from wine, from the shared breath of people who, for a few hours, have forgotten their worries. Inside, the air smells of honey cakes, olive oil, and spiced wine. The walls are painted with fading frescoes, scenes of gods and lovers, and their colors flicker with every movement of flame. Cushions are scattered across the floor, and women sit draped in loose linen and silk, their hair down, their sandals discarded. They speak freely here, voices rising and falling like music. Their laughter rolls through the room in waves, mingling with the sound of a lyre being played in the corner by a man who seems half asleep, but never misses a note. You notice how different everyone looks under lamplight. Faces that would seem stern or controlled in daylight are softer now, unguarded, almost glowing. A young woman passes you a cup of wine, her fingers brushing yours, and smiles as though you share an old secret. You take a sip. It is sweet, rich, and strong. The room sways gently with laughter and song, and you realize that in Rome, pleasure is not rebellion, it is survival. Every glass raised, every shared story, every stolen dance is a small act of defiance against the rigid order of daylight. A matron tells a story about a senator who accidentally addressed his wife by his mistress' name during dinner, and the entire room erupts. Someone nearly spills wine from laughing too hard. Another woman imitates a nobleman's pompous walk, balancing a fruit bowl on her head like a crown, and the group cheers her on until tears run down their faces. You can feel the tension of the empire, the rules, the hierarchy, the weight of it all, lifted off their shoulders for just this moment. As the night deepens, the laughter softens into murmurs. The lyre slows its rhythm, and candles burn lower. Someone starts humming a lullaby from their childhood, and others join in, their voices blending softly. You notice how the song carries something ancient, a reminder that even in the greatest empire in the world, everyone still yearns for simple things: warmth, touch, belonging, the comfort of being seen. The air thickens with the scent of melting wax. A woman nearby adjusts her shawl and says quietly, "We will laugh again tomorrow," as though making a promise to herself. You smile because you know she will, because this house, this warmth, this defiant joy will always return no matter how many centuries pass. You step outside again, and the door closes behind you with a gentle thud. The laughter lingers in your ears like the echo of something eternal. The night air feels cooler now, but it carries that warmth within it, spreading through the sleeping streets like a secret no one can silence. Rome, even in its vastness, feels intimate in moments like this. Alive not because of its power, but because of its people's quiet insistence on feeling joy, even when the world tells them not to. You walk again through the quiet Roman streets, but now the city feels changed, its pulse slower, its face hidden behind thin fabric and shadow. The night has grown cool enough that every breath leaves a faint cloud in the torchlight, and you notice how many women move through the lanes wrapped in layers of gauze and wool. They glide past like ghosts, faces half obscured, sandals whispering against the stones. You follow at a respectful distance, realizing how a simple veil can turn an ordinary stroll into a mystery. In Rome, clothing is never just cloth, it is language. The veil tells stories no one dares to speak aloud. A woman ahead of you stops beneath a flickering oil lamp and adjusts her drapery with deliberate care. The fabric catches the light for a moment, shimmering like water, and you can almost read the message written in its folds: modesty, maybe, or confidence, or the subtle declaration of someone who understands the rules well enough to bend them. You remember that Roman law once required respectable women to veil in public, a symbol of virtue and family honor, while those who worked the streets were forbidden to cover their heads at all. But here, in the quiet hours after sunset, such boundaries blur. The noblewoman and the laborer might pass each other unseen, each wearing whatever freedom the darkness allows. You step closer to a shop window left open for the night. Inside, a tailor's apprentice sits dozing beside piles of dyed cloth, indigo from Spain, saffron from Syria, madder red from Gaul. Rome's empire is stitched right there on his table. You picture how each pigment carries a whisper of the people who produced it. Farmers crushing insects for crimson dye, merchants haggling at distant ports, women stirring vats that smell of vinegar and iron. To wrap yourself in one of these colors is to wear the world. You brush your hand along a bolt of fine linen and feel how cool it is, like water just drawn from a well. The sensation lingers on your skin long after you step away. Farther down the alley, laughter echoes faintly. A pair of friends, veils drawn, share a joke that dissolves into the night air. Their voices are bright but restrained, as if they know the city's walls have ears. You wonder what they find so funny. Perhaps a comment about a pompous poet, or the endless reforms of a moralizing emperor. Humor, after all, is its own kind of mask. Historians still debate whether Roman women used the veil as protection or performance. Was it a shield, or was it theater? You watch as one of the women glances over her shoulder, sees you, and for the briefest instant lifts the edge of her veil. Her smile is quick and knowing, gone before you can return it. A spark of humanity that transcends centuries. A warm breeze drifts through the street, carrying the scent of olive smoke and sea salt. Somewhere a musician plucks a soft rhythm on a cithara, practicing alone. You let the notes guide your thoughts toward another image, a gathering earlier that evening, when women prepared their adornments in front of polished bronze mirrors. The reflections wavered in candlelight as hairpins clicked and bracelets chimed. To outsiders it might have looked like vanity, but you can tell it was something deeper, a ritual of identity. Each comb stroke, each knot of fabric, was a way to decide how the world would read them tonight. In a society ruled by appearances, mastery of appearance is power. You pass a column where an old poster, half torn, advertises a play at the theatre of Pompey. The painted mask of comedy still grins despite the rain stains running down its cheeks. You think of the actresses, who once stood on that stage, their voices carrying over the crowd, their gestures exaggerated enough to reach the farthest seats. Women there could become anyone, goddess, slave, lover, oracle. By dawn they returned to anonymity, masks removed, makeup wiped away. The pattern feels familiar even now, the tension between who you are and who the world lets you be. The street narrows, funneling you toward the heart of an older neighborhood. Clay lamps hang from iron hooks, swaying slightly in the night wind. You notice small details, the tiny cracks in the plaster walls, the faint soot mark where someone leaned a torch too close, the abandoned sandal left beside a doorway. Rome is never perfectly clean. It is layered, living, imperfectly beautiful. You breathe in the scent of wet dust and realize that this very air has been breathed before, through centuries of markets, triumphs, prayers, and secret walks just like this one. The thought steadies you. A sudden gust blows a veil from a nearby windowsill, sending it tumbling toward you like a pale bird. You catch it instinctively, the fabric cool and weightless in your hands. Its owner, a young woman with dark curls, leans out, laughing softly. "Keep it if you like," she says, before disappearing back inside. You hold the veil for a moment, noticing a faint trace of jasmine and lamp oil, then fold it carefully and drape it over a railing. The city gives you small gifts like this, moments without explanation, gestures that belong to no one. You reach a crossroads, where 4 narrow alleys meet. Above, the night sky opens wider than you expect, and a full moon balances perfectly between the rooftops. Its light turns every veil silver and every shadow blue. For a moment, everyone you see looks ethereal, almost divine, as if the gods themselves had chosen to wander unnoticed among mortals. Maybe that was the secret purpose of the veil, to make even ordinary life shimmer with myth. The breeze stills, the laughter fades. You realize how quiet Rome can be when it decides to listen to itself. Somewhere behind you a door closes softly, and the sound feels like punctuation at the end of a long sentence. You exhale, slow and deliberate, and continue walking toward the district where the artisans live. The mask part of tonight's story is waiting there, behind another door. You follow the faint shimmer of lamplight down a slope toward the Trans-Tiberine quarter, where the air smells of dye vats, wet clay, and distant river water. Here, artisans finish their night's work while the rest of Rome dreams. A single doorway glows ahead, its curtains swaying open just enough for you to glimpse the flicker of firelight inside. You step through and find yourself in a small workshop, lined with half-finished masks. Rows of faces staring blankly from wooden shelves, caught somewhere between laughter and silence. The mask maker glances up, but does not speak, merely nods toward the table where his tools lie waiting. Bronze chisels, bits of wax, scraps of gold leaf, and bowls of powdered pigment. You realize that he is preparing for tomorrow's festival, where performers will need new faces to wear before the crowd. You watch him work in near silence, his fingers quick and confident. Each motion feels like ritual, smoothing clay, brushing pigment, pressing fabric gently over a mold. You think about how the mask and the veil are not so different after all. One hides the face from strangers, the other hides the self from the world. Yet both reveal something too, what a person wishes to show, the story they choose to tell. The artisan looks up for a moment and says quietly, "Every face I make has 2 truths, the one that looks out and the one that looks back." You find yourself wondering which truth you wear most days. As you move closer, the fire's warmth deepens, wrapping around you like a cloak. The room smells of resin and earth, sweet and metallic at once. You pick up a finished mask, light, delicate, smooth as seashell. Its expression is serene, yet somehow mournful, as if it knows that joy and sorrow always share the same stage. You set it down carefully and notice that behind the shelves, the wall is covered with sketches, dozens of them. Studies of real faces from the street, bakers, merchants, slaves, matrons. Every smile and wrinkle preserved like history in miniature. The artist catches your gaze and shrugs. "The city keeps giving me faces," he says. "I only borrow them for a while." Outside, the night wind sighs through the alley again, carrying the faint rustle of fabric. You step back into the street, and for a moment you see your reflection in a small bronze mirror hanging by the door. The torchlight makes it waver, bending your features until you look like someone else entirely. The sight is strange, but not unpleasant. Perhaps that is what Rome teaches best, the art of transformation. Here, identity is fluid, shaped by the hour, the crowd, the shadows. To survive in this city is to learn how to shift between masks as easily as you shift between breaths. As you walk, you notice how even the stray cats seem disguised, dark fur merging with the stones, eyes glinting like twin lanterns. The city feels alive with watchers, all pretending not to notice one another. A group of young men passes, their laughter echoing down the street, and you see how one of them wears a theatrical mask pushed up over his head. He tips it toward you in greeting, as if recognizing a fellow traveler in this secret performance that Rome becomes after dark. The moonlight softens now, falling across the tiled roofs like spilled milk. You pause at a fountain, its basin filled with petals dropped by some unseen hand. The water ripples gently, distorting the reflection of your own face. You cannot tell where the mask ends and you begin. The air hums with the quiet tension of everything that must be hidden until morning. The unspoken words, the private gestures, the laughter, meant only for the night. Historians may never truly know what these moments felt like, but here you can almost taste them. The intimacy of anonymity, the freedom of being no one in particular. You turn toward the river. Its black surface gleams like polished obsidian, and the bridge ahead is dotted with torches burning low. A woman crosses before you, her veil trailing behind in the wind like a comet's tail. She never looks back, and yet her presence leaves the air charged with something electric, an echo of all those unseen lives that filled these same streets. You think about how countless women once balanced their worlds on such thin lines, between modesty and daring, silence and expression, shadow and lamplight. They became artists of subtle rebellion, finding meaning not in what they showed, but in what they chose to keep hidden. As the first hint of dawn touches the horizon, the city's masks begin to fall away. Curtains are drawn shut, torches sputter out. The faint song of a morning bird filters through the silence, and the color of the sky turns from charcoal to pale rose. You feel the chill of the hour before sunrise, the moment when even Rome seems unsure which version of itself to keep. You take one last look over the rooftops and imagine every veil fluttering down, every disguise folded away, every secret safely tucked back into the heart of the city. You realize that the mask and the veil were never about hiding. They were ways of being seen differently, of reclaiming a little control over how the world looks back at you. Perhaps that is why, even centuries later, the image of a veiled woman or a masked performer still holds power. It whispers that identity is not a fixed thing. It is a dance between truth and imagination. And as the first rays of sunlight slip across the Tiber, you finally understand. Rome does not wake up from its dreams, it simply changes costumes. You take a deep breath, filling your lungs with the cool air of morning, and feel the weight of the night drift away. The veil, the mask, the laughter, the silence, all fade into memory. Only the rhythm of your own footsteps remains steady and human, echoing softly through a city that never truly sleeps. You follow the fading moonlight uphill toward the Capitoline, where the great temples sit in near silence, their marble faces pale as ghosts beneath the stars. The streets are nearly empty now, but the city still breathes softly around you, the slow rhythm of guards changing shifts, of bakers lighting their fires, of distant waves whispering from the Tiber below. The air carries a faint scent of incense and olive oil, the unmistakable fragrance of devotion that clings to stone even when the prayers have gone quiet. You reach the temple steps just as the first trace of dawn softens the sky from blue to violet, and for a moment you feel like you have stepped into the breath between centuries. The massive doors are half open and a cool draft flows out from the interior. You slip inside. The floor beneath your sandals feels polished and smooth, worn down by thousands of worshippers before you. Candles still flicker along the walls, their flames bending in the faint breeze. Shadows stretch like ribbons across the columns, and somewhere deep within the sanctuary you hear a voice. A woman's voice, whispering words that sound less like speech and more like music. You follow the sound until you see her. A solitary figure kneeling before an altar of marble and bronze, head bowed, hands clasped around a small clay lamp. The flame trembles, painting her face in soft gold. She does not see you, and you stand still, unwilling to break whatever spell she has woven around this quiet place. You remember that not all Roman prayers were loud or grand. Many were whispered in corners, offered by those who sought not power but peace. This woman could be anyone, a mother asking for her child's safety, a widow seeking forgiveness, or perhaps one of the priestesses who tended the sacred flame of Vesta, keeping it alive through every storm. You watch as she exhales slowly, and the light flickers, but never dies. The walls here are covered in faint carvings, old prayers etched into the stone, some so ancient that even their language has faded from memory. You run your fingers along one and feel the grooves like a heartbeat. Each line is a story someone once needed to tell the gods, a hope that refused to vanish. Historians argue endlessly about faith in ancient Rome, whether it was genuine belief or just ritual obligation. But standing here, surrounded by the quiet weight of centuries, you realize it was both. For every grand sacrifice in the Forum, there were 1,000 small tender prayers like this one, whispered in secret and meant for no one's ears but the divine. The woman finally rises. She places her lamp on the altar, turns and walks past you without a glance. Her veil brushes your arm, light as breath, and the faint scent of myrrh follows her out into the dawn. You are left alone with the fading flame and the echo of her footsteps. Outside, the first birds begin to sing. You sit down on the temple steps and watch the sky brighten over the rooftops. The city looks softer now, its rough edges hidden in the gentle light. You think of all the women who came here before, seeking love, protection, a sign that someone, somewhere, was listening. A light breeze stirs the air, and you look up to see the temple banners shifting slightly, their shadows dancing against the columns. The sound is soothing, almost like the rustle of fabric in a dream. You remember how earlier tonight, veils and masks told their own silent prayers, the same yearning for safety, for transformation, for meaning. The temples, too, are veiled in their way. Each god wears a different face depending on who is asking for help. Jupiter the protector, Venus the comforter, Fortuna the fickle. Faith in Rome is less about certainty and more about conversation, an ongoing negotiation between fear and hope. You walk deeper into the temple again, drawn by curiosity. Behind the altar lies a smaller chamber, hidden from view. The air is thick with the perfume of burnt herbs and beeswax. Here, offerings are stacked neatly, small figurines, carved fruit, garlands dried to dust. You pick up a bronze coin, its surface rubbed smooth by countless fingers. The image of a goddess is almost gone, but her outline remains, a reminder that belief can erode but not disappear. You set it back carefully and feel an odd peace settle over you. The night has shown you Rome's laughter and masks, but here you find its heartbeat, the quiet persistence of faith in a world too vast to understand. Outside, the light grows stronger, and you hear footsteps echoing along the marble. Another woman enters, carrying fresh oil for the lamps. She hums a tune as she moves from flame to flame, feeding each one until they burn steady again. You realize that this is how the city survives, not through its emperors or monuments, but through small acts repeated endlessly by unseen hands. Every lamp lit, every loaf baked, every prayer whispered, each one a thread in the vast tapestry of Rome. You step back into the morning, feeling the temple's warmth at your back. The streets are stirring now, but the hush of night still clings to the air. You breathe deeply, catching the mingled scents of incense, smoke, and wet stone, and for a moment you feel as though you are carrying a fragment of the sacred flame with you. Rome's temples never truly sleep. They dream through those who remember to keep the light alive. As dawn fully breaks, the last traces of the Roman night begin to dissolve, lamplight fading, whispers swallowed by the hum of morning, and every secret folding itself neatly back into daylight's calm disguise. You stand at the edge of the waking city, watching how easily history hides its other half. The streets that once glimmered with mystery now look ordinary again, just markets, courtyards, and marble steps. But you know better. You've walked through the heartbeat that history rarely mentions, the unseen world of women who lived, worked and dreamed when Rome wasn't watching. Some of them will sleep through the day, others will move among the crowds, their faces unreadable, their stories untold. Yet their presence lingers, in the faint perfume that clings to a doorway, in the quiet scrape of sandals on stone, in the soft echo of laughter that no one remembers hearing. These are the ghosts of the Roman night, not spirits of the dead, but of the forgotten. And as the first light spills over the rooftops, you realize that Rome never truly slept. It only changed masks. The city, like the women who kept it alive, learned the art of survival through silence, beauty, and endless reinvention. You walk away slowly, the sun warming your back, feeling the weight of all those invisible lives that built the world you stand in, because when Rome fell asleep, they never did.